In today's video, I want to talk about how to choose what type of photography to pursue as a professional photographer. A lot of people just follow their interests. If they're interested in fashion, they pursue fashion photography. If they love weddings, love, and that sort of thing, they're naturally going to want to become a wedding photographer. But the reality is, actually making images takes up probably the least amount of your time as a professional photographer. Marketing, building your website, managing clients all take up more time, collectively at least. It's important to take into consideration not just the type of work you'll be shooting, but what the demands of that specific type of photography is. For example, wedding photography is going to require a lot more back and forth and sort of a hands-on approach with the client. It's really important that you're able to build rapport with that client, and you won't be able to do that typically in one phone call or one meeting. If you're okay with that, that works for you really well. But you might not like that back and forth. You might just want to go out and shoot and spend as much time shooting as possible. Outside of that just not being how it works, you could find a type of photography that does require less of it. Event photography, for example, typically requires very little back and forth. I book most jobs within a small email chain or within one phone call. After that, they might follow up with me if it's a large corporate event or that kind of thing once before, or just follow up to confirm I'll be there even though we have a contract. But outside of that, pretty much they book me right away. I show up at the job, I get some direction, not a lot. I do my thing, I go home. When it comes to editing, you're going to have different demands in different fields of photography as well. Commercial photography will require most likely more editing. It really will depend on the job. Additionally, there's going to be a lot more of that back and forth. It involves a lot of prep leading up to the job, and then the job might be one day, might be a couple of days, but typically then it's done, and then you're going to spend quite a bit more time on the job editing and going back and forth with the client. When it comes to event photography, I find the edit to be very easy. If really small jobs, I can get done in 20 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. However, that's not going to apply to all jobs. We're talking small jobs, maybe an hour or two long, that had great lighting, etc., and there's not much I need to do anyway. But big, large corporate events, maybe trade shows, that will require more editing, mostly because I have more images, but the actual amount of time I spend per image is much smaller than potentially any other type of photography. I got my start as a professional photographer as a wedding photographer because it was easy to get into. I didn't really want to be a wedding photographer, and I wasn't really gravitating toward weddings especially, but it was easy to get into, so I did it. And I really did enjoy it, but as time went on, I started to find myself enjoying it a lot less. Now, that was for two reasons. The first reason was I saw a lot of things I didn't care for that now wouldn't bother me. I realized there was an entire industry behind it that was pushing certain things, and I felt like a lot of my clients were just passengers in that industry, and that bothered me. The moment that really highlighted the problem for me was when a client asked me when they were cutting their cake, "Hey Mick, what are we supposed to do?" And I said, "You can do anything you want, it's your wedding." But they had these expectations that things are supposed to be done a certain way. That's a thing that really bothered me. The other part that bothered me is that back when I started shooting professionally, I stopped creating art for myself. That's for a variety of reasons. One, because I felt like constantly shooting actually made me tired of photography, which wasn't entirely true. But at the time, I felt that my wedding photography or portrait photography had to be rewarding. It had to fulfill me entirely. And that will never be the case because I did not become a professional photographer because I love jobs. I don't love being hired to shoot jobs for people. What I really love is photography. And given the choice, I would always choose my own fine art, if you want to call it that, type of photography over professional photography. But eventually what I realized is that my work does not have to be my work, meaning my artwork, the stuff I really care about. My work is there so that I am able to do more of my actual work that matters to me. Professional work was a means of making a living so that I could actually create the work I wanted to create. And once I realized that, I no longer felt bitter about an industry or anything. I realized, hey, I'm being paid good money to make photographs. And that's a good gig. And immediately I was much happier, but it allowed me to start thinking about things a bit differently. For example, because I realized photography, professional photography, was my job, I might as well make a job that fits into my lifestyle and interests. And by interests, I don't mean I love going to events necessarily. What I mean is that, first and foremost, event photography requires very little back and forth. I'm the type of person that really likes people and I don't mind going back and forth, but given the choice, I would just book a job and show up. And that leads into what I love most about event photography, and that is that event photography allows me to be entirely present. That's what I'm all about. It's the greatest state I can be in is fully devoted to the task at hand. And when I show up at an event, although I do have to interact with people and I do shoot group photos, etc., mostly I'm just there observing and capturing what I see. And it is a very spiritual-like experience when I do that. I know this job so well also that there's no pressure or stress. I just know what needs to get done and I do it and I really enjoy it. And then the next thing is I hate editing. I don't like editing my work. And I find event photography, like mentioned earlier, will require the least amount of editing. You might ask, well, won't you be shooting or editing more images? And yes, that is true. And that's the worst part of the job for me is I like to edit down, of course, and that's the worst part of seeing the images you don't like. But the actual editing, adjustments to the image, I do very little of. Basic exposure correction if it needs it, basic contrast, and some sharpening, and that's about it. And I can batch edit, and it goes by rather quickly. If I were to pursue commercial work, which I have been encouraged by people to do, I always thought about how much work would be involved outside of the image making, and I realized a lot more would be involved. And so I realized that, among other types of photography, wasn't for me. So I really hope that by sharing my own experience, it will help you guys along in your own photographic journey. Remember, it's a job, so think about what the entire job entails, not just the image making. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you. I hope this helps you on your own journey. If you want to support my channel, please check out my Patreon page. I don't do things where I add bonus content. I just try to give you guys something back, including portfolio reviews, business coaching, etc. And you can get those with different levels on that page. Thank you all.